I'm Mike Bithell, I make games, and you're watching Eurogamer.
Mike was alone. Well, okay, he wasn't completely alone. He'd just come off stage at this year's EGX Rezzed, where he'd been speaking about his new game, Volume, so there were definitely people around somewhere, but now he was sat alone in a room with nothing but a camera for company. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, a disembodied but rather sexy voice asked him to explain exactly what Volume was. So Mike, what is Volume?
So Volume, it's a stealth game. It is, it's kind of an old school kind of arcadey stealth game. So you go around these environments. Your job is to steal everything and get to the exit. You go through these environments. You get a range of gadgets. The key thing is you can't kill. There's no way to remove an enemy from the scenario. So it becomes more about crowd control and evasion rather than just kind of walking around snapping people's necks. So Loxley's the main character. He's played by Charlie McDonnell, who's a very cool chap and a very cool YouTuber. He's based on Robin Hood. That was a big thing, was I'm going to try and adapt Robin Hood. So honestly, Robin Hood is not a hero, really. He's a guy who wants to look cool. He's a show-off. And I started thinking, okay, so if he's motivated by ego, what's he going to do? What would he do in the present day? And I know a lot of YouTubers. I was like, oh, wait a minute, okay, he's a YouTube philanthropist. He's basically, he's not going to go and rob the rich and give to the poor. He's going to show the poor how to rob the rich. And it's that kind of switch, which was interesting to me. The idea is the volume you're in, the space that you're running around in simulating these crimes, wasn't designed for stealth. It was designed to train Gisborne's men, the villains who've taken the world over. But when you find it, you meet its AI, who's played by Danny Wallace, and you manage to convince him to help you and to actually use this as a stealth environment. So he has to start rebuilding his system, and he's not brilliant at what he does. So he starts building these AIs, he starts creating these stealth simulations for you, and it's kind of contrived and silly. It's not realistic, but it's not because I'm a bad game designer. It's because it's because the AI is having trouble on building these characters for you to fight against. We have a cool variety, so they're kind of, you've got the standard kind of patrolling guards that you've seen in lots of stealth games. We have melee guys who, if they see you, will run at you and knock you out. You've got non-violent enemies who will just kind of alert other guards, so they're not an immediate problem, but they are once they start combining with other forces. So it's interesting in that regard.
Sat there on his own in the quiet wood-panelled room of the NEC, Mike's mind began to wander, and as he drifted deeper and deeper into a daydream, he began to picture a selection of the non-lethal weapons that Loxley would have at his disposal in Volume. The only trouble was, when Mike's mind wandered, so did his mouth, and suddenly all his thoughts began flowing out of his body, filling the once silent room with descriptive noises.
So there's the bugle. The bugle is a ricocheting noisemaker, so you can really use that. That's kind of an AI kind of editor almost on the fly, that you can kind of go, okay, I want that guy to go over there, so I'll make a noise so he goes over and follows it, which is really fun to play with. The oud is a similar thing in that it makes noise, but you can stick it to a wall and then use it later, so that's really handy if you've got a scenario where there's a character who you're going to want to distract in a little while, but you want to kind of set the scene for that, so you can kind of stick that to a wall and leave him, and when you need it, you can come back. Then we've got some more interesting ones. We've got the Folly, which is a tripwire that you can use to catch guards unawares. You have the Masquerade, which disguises you as an enemy, so they'll think that you're one of them, but they'll become a bit suspicious. It's the old Hitman thing, if you'll walk through a room full of enemies and they'll all kind of turn to look at you, and if you stay around too long, they're going to work out who you are and come after you. So there's all these kind of things. There's 9 gadgets in total that you can pick up, and then there's a bunch of environmental objects you can interact with.
All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, the disembodied voice piped up again. Will all the levels in the core game be created by you, or will there be some sort of procedural generation involved? It said, before adding, because procedural generation is all the rage in indie games at the moment. Slightly startled by this intrusion on his thoughts, Mike blurted out the answer.
In the core set of levels that ship with the game, they'll all have been made by me and my team. Procedural's very hard to do with stealth because it's very hard. Stealth level design requires a lot of intelligent design. You have to be quite clever with it to make a fun experience for a character player to walk through. And getting a computer to do that on the fly is quite hard. So no, at its core, it's all about what we've made. But what's very cool is we include a level editor. We include the capacity for you to make your own stuff. We're shipping the tool that we use to make the levels to the players. So you can make your own levels, distribute them, play other levels that other people have made, play those levels with my story on top of it, which is really cool. So you can, in theory, if you play this game 6 months after it comes out, maybe play it a second time, you go back to it, it's a completely different level set. You can run around those environments hearing the story playing out but not seeing one level that I made, and that really intrigues me as a designer. I'm interested in what that game could become over time.
Mike was worried. He was worried that people may not understand how easy it was for users to create their own levels in Volume. It's one thing using a developer tool to create levels, but if it's rock solid to use, people might get scared off. Mike didn't want people to be scared. He liked people. They played his games. He decided to set the record straight.
So it's really straightforward. You kind of use almost like paintbrushes just to draw the ground out, then to build up your walls. Putting an enemy down is literally as easy as putting an enemy down, telling it where you want it to walk around, telling it where you want it to look at different points in that, and you set it going. And the game kind of does a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes to then turn the simplicity that you've created into something that works. So things like working out where the cover is so they can kind of create those simulations, having the NPCs kind of intelligently use the information that's been given to them to behave in a way that works. So it's been fun kind of making something that's that user editable.
Mike checked his phone quickly and accidentally connected to the internet for 12 whole seconds, and in that time he had seen everything. He had seen cats who couldn't spell, he had heard of the arrow through the knee, and he'd also seen how a large portion of user-generated content resembled penises. Would Volume have any moderation to prevent hundreds of penis levels appearing? The disembodied voice wondered out loud. Mike, still alone, answered.
You will probably. There's your capacity to make penises is limited. They're going to just look like long corridors. But yeah, no. So in terms of the actual level layouts, you've not really got the tools to make anything that offensive. I'm sure people will make silly levels. I know I've made a penis level. I'm sure the community will as well. But it's not going to be anything that's too offensive. We're going to do some stuff too, because there's text in the game. Levels have names and text can come up as you play. That stuff we'll put some limitations on, so you can't use certain language in there. But honestly, I don't want to do anything that really kind of limits the player. So we'll probably even put controls in to remove those locks if you want, just so you can have things exactly as they are. But also obviously we want to protect younger players.
And with the final question answered, Mike stood up, walked towards the door, opened it in one short, sharp motion, and re-entered the crowds at EGX Rezzed. Mike was no longer alone. And neither will you be if you subscribe to Eurogamer by clicking on that on-screen annotation. We've got loads more exclusive interviews coming your way from EGX Rezzed, plus early gameplay previews and interactive live streams galore. Yeah, lovely.